The National Productivity Council, the Department for Promotion of Industry and International Trade, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, and the Goa Business School, Goa University, with Indian Potash Limited as the industry partners, jointly presents to you today the Goa Sustainability Conclave 2023 on the theme Productivity and Green Growth, intended for Atmanirbhar Bharat and Swayampurna Goa. The light of divinity, wisdom, intellect, and good works are all manifestations of the symbolic nature of the lamp. I request Professor Jyoti Pawar, the officiating Vice Chancellor of Goa University, to kindly accompany the dignitaries for the lighting of the lamp ceremony to mark the beginning of this conclave.
It's my pleasant role to welcome all of you for this program, the Goa Sustainability Conclave on Productivity and Green Growth. This subject which we are discussing today is very important because we have some idea of the importance of sustainability. We have all a very big role to play in this. And that is why the idea is to talk about this very important and topical subject. And we need to understand how productivity and green growth, which are the two essential components of sustainability, how we can contribute towards making our environment sustainable, in making sure that we contribute to the economy and achieve a balanced growth. So as we go along, my job is to just welcome you, but as we see that after the special address and the chief guest, talking about the subject, we will go into a little more detail on all these subjects and trying to understand what these concepts are and how they are relevant for us, whether we are students, whatever part we have in the society, whether we are business leaders, whether we are teachers, professors. So it's very important that we need to talk about it in the context of an academic institution, because this is the time where we are looking at minds which are getting molded and they need to understand the significance. We all know about climate change. We know the issues that are there in climate change. We are aware of how they contribute towards the new dialogue that is happening. And this year, when India is the president, the G20, all of you have heard of it, and you should understand how they are interrelated. So this is why sustainable, productive, green growth is what we are talking about in this program today, and to encourage innovation and creativity to find new ways to reduce our environmental footprint, our carbon footprints, and how do we adopt new technologies, new processes and practices to make the environment more sustainable. That is what we want to do, for which we have all a role. As I said, you are aware of what the Honorable Prime Minister has given a slogan, LIFE, which we will discuss possibly in detail. So all of us, whether they are coming as tourists, whether we are here as a part of a student community, we have a role to play. And this is what we can achieve together. We have to work together as a community with the cooperation of the government. Now that is very important, and that is why we are honored that the Chief Secretary is here today, and he will talk about how the government is taking so many steps, particularly in the context of Goa, and how the local people are very important, how the private sector is very important, how the education sector is very important to promote productivity and green growth and plan for a very sustainable future for Goa. With these words, let me again welcome all of you, and I hope this deliberations will be very useful to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I take this opportunity to introduce Professor Purva Hegde Desai. She is a professor at the Management Faculty at Goa Business School and Director of HRDC, Human Resource Development Cell of Goa University, undertaken various research projects and consultancies. She has several Scopus Index publications to her credit. I invite Professor Purva Hegde Desai to propose the special address on the theme.
I'm here to address on corporate sustainability reporting. The flow of the presentation will be as displayed. The concept of sustainability in context, especially of corporates. An overview of sustainability reporting tools. Some frameworks and integration to give you a bird's eye view of indices. A very laudable initiative by SEBI, reporting versus performance and the way ahead. So let's get started with the concept itself. Way back in 1992, the concept of sustainability said that not only adopting business strategies and activities that meet the needs of stakeholders today, but we should also protect, sustain, enhance the human and natural resources that will be needed for the future. Then in 1997 came the concept of triple bottom line. Hitherto bottom line meant only profit. But then it was realized that for the long-term sustenance of the corporates, profit alone will not be enough as a bottom line. So then came people and the planet in the picture, and for the investors, it was appealed that look at the triple bottom line of profit, people, and planet. Though investors began looking at people and planet also, the concept of sustainability further evolved. And then they included in it also the governance disclosures. It was not enough to proclaim environmental consciousness. Till now, we sometimes see that sustainability is regarded more on only environmental consciousness, but then equally important as added to it were the social and governance disclosures. And therefore was born the very popular concept that even exists today of ESG, that is environmental, social, and governance disclosures. Of course, this was all in addition to the first of all economic sustainability of the business. In governance, the business was appealed to envisage in its vision and strategy all these goals of sustainability, ESG goals of sustainability, accordingly form the corporate profile and the governance structure percolated down to its management systems. Then came various more frameworks. Then came certain standards like ISO, OECD. Also then the researchers, academics, industry made attempts to have more concrete indices where they would start giving the scores and the ratings. Certain companies like which had a third party, regulated presentations or disclosures, third party vetted disclosures got A+ even as the scores. A notable one amongst this, like ESG, which again came here to stay, was the Sustainable Development Goals of UN, which were again short formed as SDGs. the 17 SDGs again are still popular till today, and even in the academics, our new education policy requires that sustainable development goals be even incorporated in the syllabi now onwards, so that the future generations are well aware of these sustainability development goals. So ESG and these SDGs are a little bit more on forefront today as the frameworks. And just to give you a bird's eye picture, we try and integrate both of them so that you get a picture of what exactly are there in these goals. Amongst the social goals that we are stressing, we divide something as basic, which are no poverty, zero hunger, good health, well-being, and quality education as some of our really basic goals. Because after all, resources have to be prioritized. Social goals then proceed to gender equality, reduced inequalities among strata, responsible consumption and production, and of course, strong institutions of justice and peace. On an environmental front, the goals were clean water and sanitation, affordable clean energy, climate action, life below water, life on land. On the governance aspect that came into the fold, we have decent work and economic growth, industry innovation and infrastructure, sustainable cities, communities, and a very important goal, partnership to achieve all these goals. So herein we get a bird's eye view of how the bigger goals percolate down to the level of these attainable indices. A few more aspects that are covered in the economic research nowadays, and good initiatives also that have come as a result of the research. Bombay Stock Exchange started a GreenX, which is Green Equity Index, which is based on the carbon performance of stocks. There were environmental EVA calculated. EVA is economic value added. This was only an economic aspect, that is profit minus cost of capital, but environmental EVA added financial gains that were achieved by corporates due to indulging in environment, safety, health activities. Then, on a more managerial social front, there were concepts like green organizational culture, green HRM practices, green marketing practices. All these began coming. Industries really started getting into the groove. On the green finance side, in an Indian context, it was a little limited to financing of renewable energy sector because India is following its own goal to come to the renewable energy sector to power itself. There were things like green risk premium on bonds. There were researches on how to keep the risks low because of the high gestation periods involved, and how to deal with lower credit rating issues to lure investors for investment into these kind of sectors. So this is a brief overview of the research going on in the arena of management. Now I come to the important initiative that SEBI is come for the corporates. Hitherto, though the investors were looking at what the corporates were presenting in their sustainability reports, and many of them have begun a long back presenting their sustainability activities, but there was no uniformity. And we all know that one of the major concern of reporting is to bring about a comparability. And therefore, investors had to go through long drawn, descriptive kind of reports. In order to combat this, SEBI has now come out with a standardized BRSR. These are the ways of reporting, initially for larger companies, corporates, but I'm sure in coming years it will go to the remaining also. On an international arena, the reporting standards have already gone sector-wise, like for renewable energy sector, there is another global reporting kind of standards. But at India level, this is the first attempt by our SEBI to standardize and give the corporates a format. The format is quite long, but I'll just brief on the principles that this format wishes to follow. Again, aspects that this format covers. What does it cover? Principle number 1 says that businesses should govern in ethical, transparent, and accountable manner. How? They should provide goods and services which are sustainable, safe. They have to respect the well-being of their employees, including those in their value chains. Because finally, it is the active most resource of human resource is the most active of all our resources. Fourth, not only human resource of itself and its value chain, but all other stakeholders, maybe government, society, consumers, all of them. They should promote human rights. We have had issues with children working and all that. Of course, the center stage of all this, the environment, not only protect it, but also restore it. Whenever the corporates are influencing public policy, and we know that world over, it is mostly the big corporates that drive the policies. And therefore, corporates, while driving the public regulatory policies, have to do it in a responsible manner. We cannot have a very unequal society, and therefore businesses should promote inclusive growth, equitable development. They should finally provide value to their most valued stakeholder, that is the consumer. So these are majorly the principles on which SEBI will give like a questionnaire for the corporates to answer, so that a reader can be clear, and it will help also to compare the performances in certain manner. When I come to performances, the research itself gives that in reporting practices, there's often something called as greenwashing. There are also terms like green hushing. These are the terms that researchers use to describe sometimes very wildly exaggerated claims. For example, the businesses sometimes will not tell how many trees are cut. They will publicize their tree plantation drives, but behind it, what has gone, they will be a little hush about it. So they have been saying that the reporting has been more as PR activity than paying attention to the actual. There have been other criticisms like there has not been proper balance between the ESG criteria, like GRI, Global Reporting Initiatives, are a little more inclined towards social part. BSc GreenX is more towards carbon emissions. So there have been a little lack of standardization here and there. And also another important point has been there that actually it refers to our own streams of finance also, that there has been a little overemphasis on quantification, and due to which what happens is we fall into an evaluation trap. And we look at the thing that we are going to be evaluated. So quantification has to be portrayed accordingly. So instead of instilling actual values, we are paying more attention only to the reporting part. So these have been the criticisms on reporting, especially in the corporate context. Now I come to a last part of this presentation of the way ahead. Now, in the way ahead, so far I have spoken more on corporate part. But we all know and acknowledge that we have to be all the stakeholders for whom this planet is a really survival issue. We all have to come together for this sustainability. Also, one more point that I have not noticed in my little literature review and study about this environment and ESG and sustainability is that, yes, all these issues are global issues, but there are things like think global, act local. And there are so many local issues, pressing issues, waiting for our attention. I'll just give an example. Waste management. For the city like, state like Goa, who depends totally on tourism. Of course, waste is generally important for the health and well-being, plus our tourism, which is our bread and butter. But still now in Goa, we see even at the outskirts of big cities, panchayats are not able to give a proper waste management solution, with the result that waste is still found strewn along the roads. There have been small experiments of corporates joining the panchayats, corporate joining municipalities. I have known a small case of one panchayat, Bogmalo Panchayat, which has been a success story in this regard. Another story in Margaon context, especially in partnerships, have not been so successful. But then, the question is, I think it's time for the government and corporates to partner now. Central government has been so good to Goa always. Central government provides the panchayats the necessary infrastructure. But are our panchayats equipped to handle this, or then the infrastructure will just lie unused? Without the corporates, I dare say that it may face the risk of just lying unused. And therefore, corporates have got not only a role at their level to play, but they have to have, I think, a bigger role of partnering with government on this. And of course, the principles require ethical and transparent presentation, transparent disclosures, transparent reporting. Abroad, there are instances very often in developed nation where government takes up infrastructure projects. Simultaneously, academics is studying what is being reported on the projects. We at the education level offer our services because we consider ourselves also one of the stakeholders. We offer our services. If only the government does the reporting, the way the corporates have started doing it. We offer our services participation to study why only the developed nation. We also offer our services that we can study the infrastructure projects, come up with certain suggestions. If it is the information asymmetry, due to which the schemes of central government, local government are not reaching the needy, I think ma'am has listed out our extension activities. I think we can join in seeing that the schemes are really reaching the needy, because as of now it is observed that the schemes are not reaching and the funds are going underutilized. And therefore, maybe SEBI has started with reporting initiatives for corporates. Maybe such initiatives will come by for the government, and maybe all the stakeholders, the teachers, fraternity, because it is not our duty just to teach. We are here for teaching, research, and extension. So the teaching fraternity can also join the corporates, the government, and the society at large. And together we can make a difference for sustainability.
So what I'm going to talk about is laterally connected to the theme of the discussion today, which is productivity and green growth. And it's based, I'm going to talk about two of the works that I've been involved in. And hopefully it'll make the connect between what we are doing at a different location with what the theme of the conference today is. The background to this, of course, is the Paris Agreement and our NDCs that we have committed to. The two main objectives being, putting a ceiling on the rise in global temperatures to 2 degrees and a carbon neutral status by 2050. And these in somehow connect our own NDCs and the SDGs, which Professor Purva Desai talked about earlier. The challenge, of course, remains that there is financing gaps, and that's something that both corporates and industry and the government have to figure out. So the data coverage is from a UN trade model, which is the global policy model. It comes from the UNCTAD, and we are looking at 30 countries, which is known as the Group of 30. There are four groups of countries that we looked at: the high income, the upper middle income, the low middle income, and the low income. And India features in this along with a bunch of other countries. So what did we try and do here? We looked at the transition that these countries made between 1978 and 2018. That's a period of 4 decades. It gives us a sense of what are the structural transitions that are taking place. And we add to this by saying that everybody is aspiring for a higher per capita income, and there's nothing wrong in that. So we pose the aspirational income that all countries are trying to achieve is the income that the US had in 1978, which was about $30,000 in purchasing power parity in 2015. So if all of us are trying to achieve that, what have the other countries done, and where have they reached? So this is the first image that I want to pose for you. This locates countries in terms of its geographical distance from the equator. And you'll see there are two big blobs out there. These are by size of population. So they keep repeating. There is IN, which represents India. There's CN, which represents China. And you'll notice that countries, the first frame on the left-hand side represents what was the state in 1978. The one on the right represents where it is at 2018. And there's a line which is horizontal, which shows the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn, indicating location of a country and distance from the equator. So if you see in 1978, there's only one country that's on the right-hand side, and that's Saudi Arabia. It's an outlier because it's an oil-producing country, and therefore not really representative of anything that goes on in the rest of the world. By 2018, there's a bunch of countries that have moved in the northeast quarter. And these include, of course, the US, Australia, France, the regular industrialized countries or the OECD countries that we know of. However, not every country that was beyond with what we call the tropics made it to the northeast quadrant. And therefore, just being away from the equator doesn't get you to your aspirational income. The other thing that we looked at is temperatures and its relationship with per capita incomes. Again, if you notice, there is a roughly downward sloping indication. This comes, of course, from its distance from the equator. Again, the bunch of countries that have moved to the right are the ones that seem to have a lower average temperature than the others. But again, not every country that had lower temperatures moved there, and there's a bunch of countries from Africa and Asia and Latin America that are included in that group. Now look at the share of urban population. So this is one of the transitions that we notice very, very significant. Those countries that have made it in terms of high per capita incomes, cross the aspirational per capita incomes, have a very large urban population. But again, not everybody who had large urban populations made it into that quadrant. So just by having a large urban population doesn't get you there. If you look at structural transformation, again, the image on the left represents 1978. The vertical axis represents the percentage of income coming from agriculture. If you see, there's a nice downward sloping curve. The ones that moved to the right are those that reduced their dependence on agriculture and, of course, increased their share of industries and more so in services. So if you are trying to aspire into a post-industrial world, you're really moving into a zone where the share of services and industries is going to play a dominant role. And I think this is common story, but basically when you look at the data, this comes out very strongly. So what are the climate proofing options that we can think of? And this relates to the green growth story that we are thinking of. So investments in green sectors, expanded irrigation networks, low industrial strategies, and of course, a switch to non-fossil fuel production and consumption. The word consumption seems to have disappeared from there. Anyway, so what is the role of the state here? And the role of the state is pretty important. Again, on the vertical axis, you have the gross public investment as a percentage of GDP. This share seems to have increased in most of the countries that have managed to make the transition into a high per capita income. Similarly is the role of consumption as a percentage of GDP, and this is government consumption, not private consumption. Countries that have managed to have a larger role of the state seem to have done better than those that have put in less amounts of money in consumption. What are the challenges that we face? We have challenges on the social sector, which include healthcare, social security, food security, and of course gender equity. Urban issues of housing, water, air quality. We have employment and demand generation challenges. We need guaranteed income and employment for the marginalized, and of course the environmental challenges of preservation of natural capital and biodiversity. So how do you put it in a logical framework? And if you look at climate change on the one side and what it leads to in terms of its impact on marginalized communities, and on the other side, the macroeconomic framework of exposure to shocks in the international economy, reduced fiscal space, and of course reduced social sector spending, these all restrict the adaptation strategies that countries can adapt, can choose in terms of the strategies that they can have. And moving on. So where do we go from here, right? Is there any good news out there that we can work upon? And here I switch to the next part of the work that we do, which relates to looking at how communities are adapting across South Asia. This is a bit of work that we did with 3 other colleagues from different parts of the world. It looks at South Asian examples of adaptation and how community resilience is being built either with or without state support. So this includes 7 South Asian countries. This was work that was done during the pandemic online, and this came out as a book from Springer. It's an open access book, so everybody can download it. And the thing that we presented here is to say that climate change is a global problem. There's no question about that. But adaptation and resilience building is a local challenge, and every community, every group, every city, every village has to act on this. And this has to include strategies of livelihood diversification. It has to include building of climate resilient infrastructure. Microfinance and insurance plays a big role. Of course, resource management, ecosystem integrity, and capacity building are part of these strategies for community-based adaptation. A few examples how communities are working on this. There's a great example of adaptation of solar home systems in Bangladesh. They had a target which they revised upwards because there was increased acceptance of this, and now they're targeting about 1 million solar home systems by the end of the year of, they had targeted in 2012, and currently they have reached 4 million solar home systems, and that's about 18 million people. Just an image, one of our authors who had this in his US home in Ohio, US, that's how his solar home rooftop system looks like. And the one on the right is something that comes from a village in Khulna in Bangladesh, which was a 40-watt home system. And they're using it as a business innovation. So they have these, like we have Xerox shops, they have these small solar systems that are powering units for business transactions. And they're building mini grids across villages which are outside the reach of the regular systems of electricity transmission. The other thing that is going on also is on the agricultural front. We find that Bhutan, which will come back again for another example, is using traditional rice varieties, and they're switching from what are the modern, conventional, high-yielding varieties to ones that are drought-resistant. This might reduce productivity, but in the longer run, provides safer livelihoods. In Maldives, which is a country that is likely to face the first impact of sea level rise, they are switching to climate-resilient home gardens, so they're building their food in what are known as grow more bags or buckets. And instead of relying on conventional agricultural solutions, they're finding ways where homes become their primary source of food and vegetables. In Sri Lanka, there is a zone which is known as the dry zone of Sri Lanka. And they have had these cascade tanks for irrigation, which we see in southern India too, where you have gravity flow. And they are rebuilding these in order to tackle the failure of modern irrigation systems. So this is again something that is a intervention that is going back to traditional systems rather than relying on something that was state-sponsored for a while in Sri Lanka. In Bhutan, as far as tourism is concerned, and this relates directly to what we talk about in Goa, being a major bread earner, instead of energy-intensive, water-intensive tourism, they have relied on homestays, which are, and they have a cap on the number of people they let in, and they have a minimum spending that every tourist is supposed to do. So their tourism model is a very, very different tourism model, and is likely to be a much more sustainable one in terms of the environment and providing livelihood for local communities. There's, of course, the urban challenge, which Goa also faces. We have a problem of potable supply, recurring floods due to poor drainage, and this is something, Panjim and other parts of urban India are gearing up with smart solutions. We'll see how that goes. But we also find that if you use hedonic pricing differentials, which basically means that if you look at rental differences or property price differences between areas that are recurrently flooding and those that don't flood, we find that there is a large difference that can be attributed to payment for not being exposed to flooding. And if you quantify that, it seems to indicate that a major part of the cost of urban infrastructure can come from that. And therefore, very often when we think something is not financeable because it's too expensive, it really is not the case, because we just haven't tapped that source, because we haven't figured out that people are willing to pay for it. So there is a scope for finding funding from people who are willing to pay for those infrastructure. I will stop there. This is, again, an image of what the book looks like. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Have a good day. Thank you very much.
Productivity and green growth. The green growth is a topic, is an issue which Government of India has highlighted. And if you look at the G20 conference under India's presidency, which is going on, the theme is one earth, one family, one future. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We look at green growth, which is pro-people, pro-economic activity, and pro-prosperity. I will mention here about the lifestyle for environment, which Dr. Rajiv Ranjan has briefly mentioned. The Prime Minister spoke about lifestyle for environment. He has launched life as a major goal and as a major strategy for India, for the world. I'll also mention about the commitment that the Honorable Prime Minister has made to the global community in the Conference of Parties, COP26 in Glasgow, that we will meet our net zero commitments for India by the year 2070. 2070 looks very distant, 50 years from now, 48 years from now, 47 years from now, but the action has to start today, and perhaps every state, every place in India, we have to start our action. The COP26 was followed by COP27 last year, as you may know, in Sharm el-Sheikh. A very important decision or important step which has been taken, which is rather, I look at it as pro-developing countries, emerging economies like India, and pro-industry, which is coming up of a loss and damage fund. How much time it will take, we do not know, but a loss and damage fund has been talked about. I'll elaborate on them as we go by. Coming to the net zero, what do we understand by net zero? The Prime Minister has given a target of net zero by 2070. Net zero has two tracks. As we understand today, net zero has two tracks. One track is reducing the greenhouse gases emissions. To our mind, greenhouse gases is, first of all comes carbon dioxide, but there are host of other nitrous oxide related gases and other gases also. So the greenhouse gases emission, we reduce it so that the global temperature does not rise. And how do we do that? The net zero greenhouse gases and how it relates to the industry. Because industry, we have to relate to industry, what is net zero, how it will unfold in the industry, and what are the mitigation as well as adaptation measures that industry can take. And why should industry take? Why should industry take the responsibility of achieving net zero? In that context, I'll also mention about net zero track on biodiversity. There is a COP which takes place on biodiversity track also. The last COP was held in Montreal, again last year. Both greenhouse gases and biodiversity, they are important to India, as more so to Goa. One can always flippantly say that, okay, Goa does not emit so much of greenhouse gases as a territory, primarily because all its energy requirements are met from outside. In the sense, the bulk of the energy requirement comes from NTPC. If we do not take these activities seriously today, that they are emitting lot of greenhouse gases, in due course of time, these industries, these businesses will fall behind, and other more green destinations will take over. More environmental friendly destinations in tourism will take over. Professor Mukhopadhyay talked about Bhutan, talked about Maldives. I am not saying that unless we take these steps to make our tourism industry, make our transport industry, make our hospitality industry carbon neutral. I am not talking about shutting down many activities. We are talking about net zero. Net zero, we look at net zero as a pro-industry, pro-people measure. For an example, Goa receives rainfall many more times to the local requirement of water. And if the hospitality industry uses the water in a more carbon neutral way, that will be in the interest of the business bottom lines. There are calculations, and we can prove these things, that the taking up new initiatives to reduce greenhouse gases or reduce the carbon footprint, they will be very pro industry and business in the medium term, if not long term. Having talked about the broader perspectives of net zero, how it will benefit the people of Goa, business of Goa, I'll elaborate upon the BRSR mandate. The industry operates under a regulatory guidelines. Today, only regulatory guideline, because Goa's industry are mostly MSMEs and cooperatives, including cooperatives. Very large industries are a couple of, not many. So if we take a very strict view that whether BRSR mandate of the regulator means the SEBI, whether it applies to Goa-based MSMEs, which is the bulk of we may say that, okay, they are not in the top 1,000 listed companies, because the SEBI mandate applies to only top 1,000 listed companies. We can always say that, okay, it doesn't apply to most of our industry, we will not go for BRSR mandate, because BRSR mandate is the sustainability mandate today. But our aim is not to comply with a SEBI mandate or make a detour of finding ways to avoid the SEBI mandate. Our aim is to create Goa as a carbon neutral tourism destination. So if we have to adopt BRSR mandate, it's a framework. There is part 1 is a compulsory framework and part 2 is optional framework. So if we adopt those mandates for our MSMEs, it is in our interest. Number 2 is that very soon, suppose a big industry which is in the top 100 is coming under the BRSR mandate, but it has major operations in Goa, it will automatically apply here. But that company will have a competitive advantage compared to the similarly situated companies in Goa. Suppose you take a name of a top big, say I take the name of a X company which is in the top 100, the sustainability of BRSR mandate of SEBI applies to it. It has a production facility in Goa, so it will get covered. As a competitor, another small company, MSME, which also produces the same product or services. The bigger company will be compliant of BRSR. The smaller company, which is operating in Goa, is not compliant of the BRSR. But what is the competitive advantage of the bigger company? the access to green finance, because today access to green finance is the key. Your competitive advantage is through the access to green finance. The green finance, I'm not talking about the recent series of RBI green bonds, but also the green finance, when it flows to a corporate, India as a country, we are looking at finance from abroad also for our growth, to maintain our trajectory. So if we are compliant of the BRSR, even if it is a small company, small industry in Goa, it is not required to comply with the SEBI mandate. It will have access to cheaper, green finance if it is of the BRSR mandate. BRSR mandate in Indian terms is a ESG, which environmental social governance. ESG is the generic term which is globally seen as a definite advantage to the industry. So ESG norms we have to adopt to become competitive, to remain competitive in the future as well. How NPC can help in this context? Particularly I am talking about the MSME and industry in Goa. What we are doing in the country. In the country, we are one of the ESG or rather BRSR end-to-end solution providers. My colleague Sri Bharadwaj will elaborate on that. In Goa, we suggest, since the Chief Secretary, Head of the Civil Service in the government is there, we propose that the Academia, Goa University is here, the Government of Goa and National Productivity Council, which has its own inbuilt strength to handle ESG. Perhaps we could enter into some arrangement to work together towards green growth and sustainable future of Goa. This is a suggestion we could discuss and work on it.
It is indeed my privilege to introduce the chief guest to the audience, Shri Dr. Puneet Kumar Goyal Ji, IAS, the Honorable Chief Secretary, Government of Goa. He is a B.Tech in Electrical Engineering from IIT Kanpur, MS in Computer Networking from University of Southern California, USA, PhD in Renewable Energy from IIT Delhi. He started his career as Deputy Collector in Goa, Collector in Arunachal Pradesh, Director in Ministry of Power, Executive Director in REC Limited, Relief Commissioner during Tsunami in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Transport Commissioner in Delhi, Municipal Commissioner in South Delhi, and presently he is posted as Chief Secretary in Goa. He has published peer-reviewed papers in international journals on renewable energy. He has also written a book, Andaman and Nicobar Islands Through the Tsunami, and has 2 patents in power generation using renewable energy sources. For his work, he has been awarded by the President of India in 2017 First Prize on National Energy Conservation Day from President of India for replacing 3 lakh sodium lights in LED street lights. In 2019, the President of India awarded Sir first prize in Waste to Wealth category at Safagri Awards for creating Waste to Ponder Park from scrap. In 2002, he received Jal Jeevan Mission Puraskar Award 2022 from the President of India. With these few words, I request Shri Goyal Ji to address the gathering.
respected Shri Nayak sir, respected Rajiv Ranjan sir, other dignitaries on the dais, and the friends from Goa University, faculty, industry, and students. So a lot of speakers, very knowledgeable, they have talked about this topic, sustainability, green growth. It is, with some authority I can say, it's a very dry, very boring topic, because I've spent 4 years doing my PhD in this topic, renewable energy and sustainability. So it's a very boring topic. Then I guided also one PhD. So I know with some authority I can say. So I'll try to make my talk little interactive. My previous speakers have covered most of the issues, so nothing much is there to talk about. But I would like to give some national perspective and some Goa perspective on this, on the 3 issues. One is green power, green transportation, and the waste management, because one of the speaker commented about the waste management in Goa. And maybe I'll just touch about biodiversity, because a lot of news is there about these forest fires. So as a inquisitive Goan student and the faculty, you should know that what government is doing about this. So as Sir Nayak sir knows, I went to the Ministry of Power in 2005, and I joined there as Director Thermal. That means in charge of all coal-based plants. So, and at that time the country was expanding coal. We were not thinking so much about renewable. We used to compare ourselves with China. One very dynamic secretary, Mr. R.V. Shai, was there, and he was from a thermal background. We were always saying that how many more thermal plants we can put. And at that time I decided to do PhD. I went to IIT Delhi, met some of my faculty members. First of all, it was very difficult to get a guide. I said, sir, I have so much, I told many faculty members, I have such brilliant academic record, why you are not taking? They are saying that, they said that we are not sure you are IAS, you will not work. You will rather make us work to do your PhD. So ultimately one professor, he took the risk and he made me join under him, Professor Bhim Singh. He has guided more than 30 PhDs. So he took a risk, he has guided all kinds of students, and he has given them doctorate, helped them in getting doctorate. So the topic, which topic you take, that was the biggest challenge. I said, and I was working as Director Thermal. So I told sir, I want to work on super thermal power plants as my PhD topic. Then he asked me to see some papers. He gave me some list of 20-30 papers. He said, you go through these papers. Then I realized that maximum research in the world in 2005, it was taking place in the renewable energy sector. Whether you go to business, whether we have talked about SEBI, whether you go to electrical engineering, whether you go to artificial intelligence also has a role in the solar and wind. I will briefly touch that up. So finally we decided that renewable energy will be my topic. But then the challenge at that time, and one of the professors said that it has no future, like solar PV. There was one school of thought in IIT Delhi that solar PV has no future. Why? Because the cost, electricity cost, was 17 rupees a unit at that time, solar PV. And whereas thermal power was 2-3 rupees a unit. So whatever we may talk about green growth and renewable energy, people will not buy unless it is economically sustainable. So still I took a risk and I worked in solar PV and wind power. Wind power was also at that time about 4 to 5 rupees a unit, and thermal was about 3 rupees a unit. Then the Jawaharlal Nehru solar mission came, And there was a very good tender done in Gujarat on solar PV. Earlier we were doing tender for 25 years, 10 years. The cost was coming 17 rupees. Then Gujarat in 2008 they did one tender where they said that for first 12 years there will be one cost of power, and for next 13 years there will be different cost. Because in the first 12 years you are able to recover entire capital cost. With that tender, the power cost for first 12 years was 12 rupees a unit, and for next 13 years it was 4 rupees a unit. Then Jawaharlal Nehru solar mission came. In that the power cost came down from 17 rupees to 12 rupees. Then it came down from 12 rupees to 9 rupees, 7 rupees, ever falling. Now it is about 2.5 rupees. And whereas thermal power, the cost is going up, it's about 3 rupees, 4 rupees. So can I ask, can somebody reply that when the solar cost is today 2.5 rupees, why can't we buy all solar power? Can any student reply? Why we are buying? Still, Goa is buying about 90% we are buying thermal power. Why can't we buy just solar and wind? Wind cost also has come down to 2.5 rupees. In fact, Honorable CM, he had put this question to us that we should have all renewable. Why is it not possible? Can somebody answer? One student. Why Goa cannot have all renewable energy, despite the cost is lower than the thermal power? Can some student reply? Some student. The transmission of renewable energy is free. Transmission till the projects which are coming till 2024, I think. The transmission cost Government of India has made zero. But the main reason what our friend, he said that the storage, because the solar power generation has a graph. It peaks at around 12 in the day, and then it after about 5-6 o'clock there is no generation. So somebody there, some source should be there to supply power in the night. Then one can go for battery, but the cost of battery power is so high. There were predictions that in 2022, by 2022, the battery cost will come down, but it has not yet come down. But I can still share that Goa was the first state where we signed a 150 megawatt contract with Solar Energy Corporation for supply of solar PV with battery. So we are the leading state in that respect. And we have set a target of 30% renewable by 2030. And of course by 2050 the entire country has to go on renewable. So the major challenge is the storage, which continues to be the challenge, and we hope that the cost of solar PV has come down, the cost of storage will also come down. And if somebody has read the finance minister's speech for this year, she has earmarked 20,000 crore for national hydrogen mission, green hydrogen mission. And from the Goa side, we are also thinking of having a pilot. And our minister has already talked to the power minister. So we hope that we will hear soon about this. So that is what about energy. As Nayak sir said, that our 90% of the power is coming from NTPC. We hope to bring it down to about 70% by the end of this decade, and make it zero by 2050. Of course, now NTPC is also producing green power, although its name is National Thermal Power Corporation. But because of its existential crisis, it opened up many subsidiaries which are also doing renewable energy generation. So that is good because it's a cash-rich company. If it is investing in green power, it is good for the nation and good for the states like Goa. So this is what we have. Goa is trying to do. We are thinking. We may not be sharing in the media so much, but we are constantly thinking that how to go complete green power. Second sector which generates maximum greenhouse emission, greenhouse gases, is transportation. And it's not only our commitment to the world, but as a transport commissioner, my experience in Delhi, there are a lot of studies by IIT Kanpur also, that why this AQI, which reaches to 450 during winters, one of the major reason is the vehicles. With about 2.5 crore population, and I think vehicle population also more than 70 lakh in Delhi, the vehicular pollution, it creates the maximum AQI. It generates the affects the AQI maximum in Delhi. There also, now the question is that electric vehicles are there. Why we are not buying electric vehicles? Again, it is a matter of the cost. Electric car is about few lakh rupees costlier, of the same capacity, few lakh rupees costlier than the normal automobile. Although I will recommend everybody to read one book, which is Clean Disruptions, by one Mr. Tony Seba. I have read this book, so all the students can read this book. So he predicts that a time is going to come when we will have all electric cars, and when we go to our offices, we are going to charge, and when we go home, we'll plug those batteries to our residences and light our houses from those batteries. But it all depends on the cost of the battery. Cost of battery has not come down, as I said earlier, as we had thought earlier. I would like to share a personal experience regarding electric car. In 2017, Ministry of Power, there is a PSU EESL. They procured a lot of electric cars, so I also got excited, and we decided in MCD we will not buy any more automobiles, and we procured 75 electric cars. And since there was no takers, I was the commissioner. To set an example, I thought that I will also travel in electric car. But the problem was that after, those were the first generation electric cars. And as a commissioner, you travel almost 150 kilometers per day. After 80 kilometers, the AC goes off. So I had to show a very brave face. But my driver was very perturbed that why sir is using electric cars, the AC is not working, Delhi temperature is so bad. But now the better cars have come, which can go even up to 250 kilometers, and I have heard that even cars up to 600 kilometers have come. But the cost will come down if we use it more. Like the solar panel cost. It has come down because there is a proliferation of solar panels. Similarly, electric cars, the cost will come down only if there are more users. We have a subsidy scheme in government of Goa, where on the per kilowatt hour basis we give subsidy. And there are, Goan people in general, they are more environment conscious compared to other parts of the country, and a lot of people have come forward, availed that subsidy. But ultimately, in the long term, any technology that can be useful, that can proliferate only if it is economically sustainable. So I hope and I'm sure that a time will come when these automobiles will go and these electric cars will be there. We are buying some electric buses also. Although public transportation, the users are very less in the state of Goa. So I hope this small initiative will also make a difference. As regards waste management, Madam spoke that it's not as good as it should be in a tourist state. I will say there are two parts to waste management. One is a waste processing and other is a waste collection. As regards waste processing, we are one of the best in the country. We have 2 plants where less than 5% of the residue is going to the landfill site. And rest of the almost 250,000 ton RDF we have produced, which has gone to the cement factories. But our problem is the collection method and the management in the panchayat and urban local bodies. And of course, the best collection method is in Indore. I have seen it personally. It has, for last many years, it has got the first prize in Swachhata Abhiyan. The reason is that from every house, there is a very robust collection system, and every household pays for the waste collection. In Goa, we are very reluctant, or I would say that we are reluctant to impose that fees, and as a Goans, we are reluctant to pay that fees also. So unless, if we collect 90% of the waste, and it goes to a waste management plant, but 10%, 5% is still lying on the roads, or people are just throwing away from their houses, then the impression about the city or the state will be that it is dirty. Whereas we are one of the best. NGT has appreciated the 2 plants which we are having, one in North Goa, one in South Goa, another 3rd plant also we are planning. So the waste management, waste processing, we are far ahead than the other states in the country, but waste collection, there is still a lot desirable which is required to be done. Finally, Mr. Nayak, he touched about these forest fires. I would just like to apprise that the government is very much concerned. We still don't know the reason that why so many fires which are taking place. Today also there was some incidents which have taken place, whether it is mischief or it is because of the rise in the temperature, it is happening. But Forest Department is very closely working with Air Force and Navy. I have personally spoken to Honorable Defense Secretary, and we are closely working, and I hope that we'll get a good news sooner than the later. With these words, I want to thank everybody for having patience to hear to me, and we would definitely like to take this forward as DG NPC said that I have requested him to share an MOU, and then we will see that I'll present it to the CM and hope that we carry forward it from here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I now take this opportunity to introduce Shri K.D. Bharadwaj ji, Group Head and Director of Energy and Environment, Group Head and Director of International Services at National Productivity Council at the headquarters, New Delhi. Mr. Bharadwaj is an environmental engineer by qualification with more than 25 years of professional experience in the area of environment and energy management, including more than 17 years with National Productivity Council of India and 10 years with the Tokyo-based Asian Productivity Organization. With these few words, I request Sir to address the gathering.
Thank you, ma'am. Dignitaries on the dais, Chief Guest Puneet Kumar Goyal ji, DG NPC Sandeep Kumar Nayak ji, Professor Jyoti Pawar, Officiating Vice Chancellor, Goa University, Sri Rajiv Ranjan ji, Director ICRO, and of course Professor Pranav Mukhopadhyay ji, and Madam Purva ji, Professor Purva, and of course Professor Borde ji. Once again, good afternoon to all of you and all the delegates. Let me briefly explain to you about the productivity and green growth and what NPC has been doing. Briefly about NPC. NPC was set up in 1958 to promote productivity. In 58, any idea what was the GDP of our country? In 58, GDP of our country was around 27 to 30 billion dollar, in that range. And today we have more than 3.4 trillion dollar and aiming at $5 trillion. So there has been tremendous productivity improvement since 58. 58, our population was around 50 crore. Now we have almost 130 crore. So of course population has also gone up, maybe more than double. But the growth has been very high in terms of the GDP. And of course there has been contribution of productivity enhancement because per capita income has been rising. There has been some contribution from NPC also. We have been promoting productivity in industry, service and agriculture sectors in the country. And our governing council chairman is the Honorable Commerce and Industry Minister, Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Our president is Secretary DPIIT, and NPC has a vibrant linkages with the Asian Productivity Organization, which is based in Tokyo. We have different verticals in the NPC through which we promote our services. It includes environment and climate change, energy efficiency, industrial engineering, human resource management, organizational restructuring, manpower optimization studies, and of course agriculture and allied sectors. So we promote productivity in all these sectors, and these all are important for achieving green growth, green economic development. All these interventions are very important. We have offices throughout the country, 12 regional offices with headquarters at New Delhi, and with local productivity councils also working closely with NPC, which are also set up on lines with NPC. So 28 LPCs, 13 our offices, almost 40 locations. So what I'm trying to say, NPC is very highly accessible, reachable to all the clients in different sectors. We work with the government organizations, state government, central government, PSUs, private sector also. As DG NPC mentioned that recently we have been working more closely with the private sector. Keeping in mind the different subjects we deal in, so we have total solution under one roof, focused professionals, more than 160 plus engineers, economists, researchers, scientists working in NPC to provide the solutions. Time-bound delivery track record, services from the MSME to the large scale, that's our client base. And we work with the local government to the central government, so different kind of clients. Multidisciplinary services we provide, and green growth requires all these services because multidisciplinary subject is there. So that is where NPC can actually directly assist you in green growth solutions, keeping in mind the multidisciplinary expertise and capability to take up large-scale surveys in the country, national studies due to our presence throughout the country. And NPC is under DPIIT, but our governing body consists of employers, employees organizations, and government. So all three are in our governing body. So we are considered neutral organization in the country, and that's why we are the best for the third-party assessment and audit services because we are neutral. We are not pro-government, we are not pro-industry. Both are equal for us. International expertise now is through our connections with the APO, Asian Productivity Organization, based in Japan. What I'm trying to say, there are 20 other NPCs in Asia Pacific, like Japan has one NPC, Korea has one NPC, Thailand has one NPC, Malaysia has one NPC, and we all are connected through APO, which is in Japan. And government of India pays the membership contribution. Our various contributions in 58 in the country, more than 7,500 consultancy assignments, which are called productivity improvement studies for industries, including SMEs and large industries. Training is our another forte where we train more than 1.5 million now, different professionals in different areas. Developed more than 20,000 energy managers and energy auditors, and that is where we can assist state government of Goa. Because, sir, of course, we have been doing great for moving towards fossil fuel to non-fossil fuel. But in terms of energy efficiency, Goa is yet to do better actually. Because compared to the national average, energy efficiency improvements are not there in Goa. in transport sector, tourism, building sector, and there is a lot of scope for improvement in Goa. Because even if you generate energy from wind power, solar power, it can't be wasted, isn't it? Energy has to be utilized efficiently, whatever the source is, whether fossil fuel or non-fossil fuel. So this is where, compared to other states in the country, Goa has a lot of scope for improvement, and that is where NPC can help, because we work with the buildings, industries, commercial establishments, especially in the area of energy efficiency. So that expertise can definitely be helpful for the state government of Goa. We have trained professionals in the area of waste management. Again, sir mentioned about the collection, segregation. It's very important at this segregation at the source, and that is where citizen support is required, because without the proper segregation, you cannot achieve the proper waste management. And again, here NPC can actually train the resident welfare associations and other NGOs or other practitioners in the state of Goa, because we have worked on the ground to train different entities, stakeholders for achieving 100% segregation. We also work with industries to promote lean manufacturing and waste minimization, and also the environmental management systems in different industries. So different sectors we have worked in the industries. Now coming to productivity. So, because productivity is resource efficiency, productivity is effectiveness and efficiency, both together. It's not just output divided by input. Why I'm talking about productivity is, it directly leads to green growth. I told you about the India having the $27 billion GDP in 58, now $3.4 trillion. So productivity has gone up. But is that the right way? Because we are facing different issues: climate change, weather, atmospheric issues, pollution. So what is the right way of achieving development? That is where green growth comes in picture. Productivity can be improved. Goa, look at the Goa now. See, Goa, per capita income of Goan people is highest in the country. You earn much more than anybody else in the country. But Sikkim is not far from you, very close to you. Sikkim earns almost equal to you, maybe a little lesser than you. But look at the environmental cost of both the states in the country. If we environmentally adjust, your GDP and Sikkim GDP will come down. Because the environmental adjustment compared to Sikkim is doing much better in terms of carbon footprint. Because as a Goa state citizen, your carbon footprint is almost 3 times of national average. So you are doing good job, you are earning much more than anybody in the country, but at the cost of environment to some extent. Same thing I'm comparing in the same country, Sikkim, where almost equal amount they are earning, maybe a little less than you, but with a much better environment. So this is where green growth comes in picture. Growth is important, development is important, but how do you become productive? So that, because in future, GDP will be like that, environmentally adjusted GDP. It won't be just pure GDP in terms of money. And when you put environmental cost, because it's a debt on you. When you make environmental damage, you create a debt which is not visible, but somebody has to pay for it. And our future generations have to pay for it. So productivity has to be understood from that perspective now. And it's actually it's a state of mindset, because it means you make tomorrow better than today. That's it's not just output divided by input, but making tomorrow better than today in terms of everything. Better environment, better life, better income, better resources in all way, better health. So it's all inclusive. Of course, for industry, when it comes, when we talk about industry development, it's output divided by input, and what is the value added goes into that. Let me just, and of course it adds to GDP, but see, there's a middle path. When we talk about productivity, we can't just talk about only volume or quality, because that has it has an environmental impact. When you produce more and more in terms of volume without talking about the quality and service to the nation, you may be producing more, your GDP may become high, but there is a cost to environment. And this is where green growth comes in picture. So why green growth? All of you know about this greenhouse gas effect, because this all greenhouse gases, they are trapping the heat. Let me tell you, billions of years ago, more than billions, 10, 11, Earth was formed, isn't it? Earth formulation has taken almost 7 to 8 billion years. Just this Earth has to come into existence. Earth means what? Atmosphere, this soil, crust, mantle, mountains, ocean, river, everything has happened naturally. It's not man-made. It took billions of years, and then man came in picture maybe around a million year ago. Human being came into existence. When the atmosphere, weather became compatible for the human being, we came into picture. We started evolving, and we are still evolving, by the way. We are still evolving. Evolution is going on. And there's a research, it says that after 10,000 years from today, or say 20,000 years, if you ask any human being, what is 10 plus 7? They will use calculator. They may not be able to calculate, because the way now our lifestyle is, after 10,000 years, the human being will be totally different, because we are using so much computers and gadgets, so our brain won't work. So evolution is going on, but in last 150 years, what has happened? Apart from evolution, the way to development, Industry 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, we started disturbing an earth which took billions of years to be formed. So something which has been made by nature, something which is underground, something which is flowing in the rivers or in oceans, if you start disturbing it, it will come back on us. So that's why now people talk about nature. So it's not only about global warming or this greenhouse effect. It's very simple to understand. Earth has been formed naturally in a certain way to make you live on the earth, and we are the same people now disturbing the same earth. And now earth is reacting back. It has to react back. So how do we change our lives so that we can keep the earth the way it was formed, so that we can live longer and more generations can come and become healthier? So that is why green growth is important, where without disturbing the earth, earth gives us a home. How do we continue to live a better life without disturbing the earth? All these gases we create through, all these are man-made gases, which actually disturbs the environment, creates heat on the earth, in the globe, and creates global warming. So different sources, all these are part of our development and progress, and that's why now see everything become go green, natural farming, natural life. So the indication is you do not disturb earth, stop disturbing earth, and life will be better. Ultimately that's the aim, and that's the green growth. So look at the countries who emit greenhouse gases in terms of the amount. The number one is here China. This is the latest report. Second USA, then India. These are the total amount of greenhouse gas emissions. Of course, our per capita greenhouse gas emissions may be less because we have a large population. But in terms of total amount, we are number 3 in the world. And then, of course, Indonesia, Russian Federation. So even today, there's a huge amount of almost highest is China with 15 gigaton CO2 equivalent. So if we are still going into the same way towards increasing the temperature of the earth, which is now beyond 1.5 degrees centigrade. These are the different impacts. If we don't stop, of course, it's going to happen. And I think Goa, Chief Secretary Saab also mentioned that forest fires and things are happening here. So loss of biodiversity, it's visible now. It's visible. The reason has to be found out why it's happening. So COP91, Conference of Parties 95, the first time scientists met in Berlin, and almost 27 meetings have been held to discuss this matter now. How do you stop climate change? The only way is to go green, to become natural, to utilize less resources, to create less and less damage to environment. Our efforts now, after COP26 in Glasgow, most of the countries made the commitments to become net zero. This is the picture of G20 countries. But their current development or current activities, see Japan, they say, with the current policies and initiatives they have taken, maybe they will be able to achieve their net zero target if they continue. Even Korea also, you can see the arrow is going down. Russian Federation, currently, going by this report, they can't achieve their target. Saudi Arabia, no. South Africa, maybe little bit later. Turkey, of course, no. United Kingdom, maybe on the right path. USA earlier. So they have already taken steps. Now come to, Argentina. They are all G20 countries. It's difficult to achieve. China also, no. India also. See, India also. This is again UNEP report, maybe 2022. So if we do not change our way of working, growth, development, as sir mentioned about lifestyle for environment, life, industrial development, transportation, our housing, buildings, I think a lot of changes are required. Otherwise, of course, we have made this target 2070 to become net zero. But current UNEP report says it is, if you continue to do what you have been now, we will not be able to achieve this. So a lot of efforts are required. Green growth, where do we stand in Asia? You see, we look at somewhere in the middle. India is there, maybe from the bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5th. So we are still in the middle. Even in the green growth, like Japan, and other countries, China, Malaysia, South Korea, they have achieved different scores. So in green growth also, on all these factors, which comes like efficient and sustainable resource use, natural capital protection, our forests, our biodiversity, our lakes, our rivers, how do we protect them? We have to improve a lot. And then, of course, green economic activities, opportunities, and social inclusion. So in all these sectors, we have to do a lot of work to achieve green growth. Climate concern was raised in not only 26, but in every COP. And if we do not change, so it says, even after including all the, look at the point number 3, even after including all the net zero pledges, even if you become all net zero, and updated country ambitions made at COP26, the world is still on a way to become 2.4 degrees centigrade global warming trajectory. So we have to go beyond our targets so that this heating stops. Otherwise, a hot future awaits us. This is the latest, last 1 or 2 years, where India has suffered a loss of so much GDP. So it is a direct loss of GDP in terms of the work hour lost, and heat waves, everywhere temperature is increasing, erratic rainfall, cloud burst, depleting natural resources. So all these things don't need to repeat. This is happening in every state, every country they are experiencing. So, of course, this mission life Sir talked about. Recent budgets are also mentioned that we have this various priorities, green hydrogen. Government will do all these things, but ultimately on the ground, you have to change. Human being has to change. Because government will assign budget and they will, ensure that things are done. But if cultural part, society level, if you do not change every individual, not for the sake of government, you are not changing for the government. You are not changing for somebody else. You are changing for your survival. Keep that in mind. Otherwise, a lot of diseases are happening now. So this is a threat to all of us. So from that perspective, we all need to change, bring a change in our life. Priorities, green growth and youth power. These are the 2 important priorities. So many youths are sitting here. So you are the future of this country, and definitely you can bring a lot of change in the country, and you have to start now. Most recent initiatives like green hydrogen mission, life safe environment, battery. Sir mentioned about the storage. Of course, when there is a need and there is requirement, they become affordable. Everything becomes affordable when you need it. So if you need batteries, they will become affordable. Now we need solar power, it becomes affordable. In coming future, if we require batteries, they are going to become affordable. So renewable energy is definitely important. At the same time, we need to become energy conservative, energy efficient also. Waste to wealth, natural farming. Then, of course, Goa, not only heat, my only point is this is also in part of research that by 2050, if we don't change, half of the Goa will be under sea actually, low-lying areas. So that's the biggest threat to Goa. Not only talking about the mosquitoes or maybe water pollution, waste management, the Goa, low-lying areas will be, 40% of the Goa's low-lying area will be under the sea. And of course, other things become very subsidiary now. They are secondary to this. So it is part of survival of our citizens and some of the areas which are near the sea, coastal areas. So that's why green growth becomes important, and it has been already discussed various aspects of green growth. Low carbon economic growth is required. Waste management, circular economy, it has been already explained by some of the speakers, so I will not go into details that from waste to resource, production, consumption, all aspects have to be included. Industries, citizens, societies, government, they have to all work together to transit to a circular economy so that there is no waste. Waste has to be utilized. Waste has to be considered as a material loss, because waste comes from where? Ultimately, waste comes from the product you use or the raw material you use. Waste is not coming from somewhere else, isn't it? you take some raw materials, you process them, and from there waste comes. So how can you call it like waste? It's a material loss because you are not efficient enough to make this process 100% converting that raw material into product. So it's our inefficiency. It's a human being's inefficiency generating waste. So we are responsible for that. So don't call it a waste. It's because of our mistake, our inefficiency. It's a material loss. And how do I recover this material? That is a part of circular economy. If you think from that perspective, definitely there will be many solutions. Then comes to this, of course, different areas of productivity. Labor productivity is required, capital productivity, total factor productivity to achieve green growth. So holistic solutions are required to achieve green growth. So academia has to join. And in academia, now the environment has crossed the boundaries, all streams. See, whether you are part of art, science, engineering, doctor, whatever you are doing, two things you have to learn. One is sustainability and second is ICT. It has become part of all these streams. Whether you are doing whatever, sociology or history or geography, whatever you are studying, sustainability aspects have to be brought into the curriculum of every course. And of course, the second is ICT, digitalization, that also has to become part of the every syllabus. And that is where then you will be able to improve labor productivity, total factor productivity, and also capital productivity. Then comes, of course, I discussed this, productivity, consumption. Last, this G20 latest, why I put the entire statement here, paragraph, because see, look at, in that one paragraph of the statement of G20 finance ministers, how many times they talk about climate finance? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. It's a 15-page document, there's one paragraph, and in this paragraph, almost 8 times climate finance has been talked about. G20 finance ministers and G20 countries contribute to 85% of the global GDP. 85%. And these finance ministers are saying we need to assign US dollar 100 billion climate finance. And what earlier NPCD was saying, these green funds are available now to the countries who require for investing into green technologies. But we need to write proposals, write framework to support this project. Setting up climate finance, net zero emission targets they are talking about, deployment of climate technologies. So it looks like an environmental minister statement, but not. This is a statement by finance ministers. So when finance ministers are talking about climate finance and technologies. So this has become important and it has to be adopted. This is your Prime Minister's recent address, 3 pillars of green growth. Again, same thing, he's talking about renewable energy is very important and reducing the use of fossil fuels. And of course, bio-CNG, now they want to add biogas into CNG. They already tried ethanol in petrol, they already tried. It has worked very nicely and they achieved the target, adding 10 to 15%. Now they want to make it 20% ethanol in the petrol. So that's a new business. Ethanol, slowly it will increase. First 5% ethanol in the petrol, diesel, then comes 10%, then 15%, now 20%. Similarly, now in CNG, they plan with 10% biogas, so bio-CNG. So it's a new business generation, new kind of opportunities in the country where you generate biogas from biomass, and we have 200 to 300 millions of tons of biomass in the country available to be used. Otherwise, it becomes a waste. So that biomass can be converted into biogas and put into CNG. So that's also part of green growth. And so green jobs are going to come now because of these green growth initiatives. So many sectors will get advantage in terms of green jobs. Changes in employment structure because of the skills required now to work into the green economic development activities. Look, when I was talking about ICTC, look at the technologies that are coming up now. All concerning ICTC, this is like application web-enabled markets, machine learning, cloud. Why I was telling this? This is the future of why I was telling that after 10,000 years, after 20,000 years, due to evolution, human being will become different because we will be all using these technologies. If you ask them 10 plus 7, they won't calculate. They will use one of the gadgets and tell you it's 17. So this is the future. So be it any stream, any area we are studying, start learning about this ICT and of course sustainability issues. Both are important. Example of sector where the green jobs will come, green agriculture, sustainable construction, all these areas, new jobs are coming. And recent study was like 3 million jobs are already created now only due to this. Utility solar, utility scale solar, rooftop solar and wind. Only in these 3 sectors, so many jobs are available. And look at this, adaptation. Now state governments are hiring resilient people they want. Resilient climate and town specialists, resilient. Why they have added this word? This means they should know the climate change adaptation. How do you adapt to the climate change? So those kind of specialists are required now. This is the kind of recruitment taking place as a part of green job. And do we have the talent, enough talent available? Because this is a message for the universities, for the colleges. Make available this talent, because this is the most recent news where they don't have people and now they are sending their own staff to Singapore to get training, because we do not have talented people available to work in this area. This is about the solar. So enough number of employees have to be created by training, by providing them good inputs. Other like this phase change material to create the cold rooms for storage of, this is a small storage in the rural areas where large cold chain system not available, so storing of apple, banana, different fruits and vegetables. So this is another area where solar base, you look at it on the roof, solar power. So this kind of cold storerooms can be utilized in rural areas, self-sustaining, and they can still store the different vegetables and fruits, helping the rural community. Then biomass briquetting, I told you biomass to biogas, biomass briquetting, and already Goa is doing good job in terms of RDFs. Comes to biogas plants for bio-CNG. So there are various fields are opening, various new opportunities are coming as a part of green growth, and we have to adopt it. There is no other way. Green finance, we already talked about, various funds they are available in the country to put into green and green technologies, different sectors. So be ready for the green growth. There is no other way. There is no alternative. You have to adopt it. There is no solution for this. It's a part of our life now. And the change has to come individually and of course collectively. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I now request Shri Dr. Rajiv Ranjan Ji, IAS, to share his views on the theme.
We had very good presentations, very good details coming up, and personal experiences coming up, and I just wanted to share that with you, that as Dr. Goel had mentioned, I was also in my quest for PhD, I landed up into IIT Delhi, and I also had a similar problem of finding a right guide. My subject was even more esoteric. It was intellectual property rights. Now that is again, I'm talking about 20-25 years back, it was a subject where not many people had worked on, and other than lawyers there would be very few people who would even know about all that. So this challenge of getting into details, doing a research base, trying to find out what knowledge is and then adding to it, this is what education institutions do. What you have been exposed to today is a large variety of subjects. Climate change, how it affects us, and what the message, though not gloomy all the time, but please understand that it is a crisis. Now depends upon who defines the crisis or how you take a crisis. Some people get very worried, some people don't care, saying that look, anyway it will take care of yourself. So there are varieties of weight. But my point was that energy transition we have seen. As Dr. Goel mentioned, you see how quickly it changed. 25 years back or 20 years back, when the tenders were floated and where people used to think that renewable energy would it come. I had myself personal experience of this. I was Principal Secretary Energy in Government of Tamil Nadu, and also I was the chairman of the electricity board there. You see, Tamil Nadu has been I would say a leader in many respects in certain areas. So energy transition, for example, Tamil Nadu was at one point of time having 50% of the total wind energy installation in India was in Tamil Nadu. Now you see others are catching up. But what I'm trying to tell you is that in certain areas, some states, they do a pioneering role. But they come across issues because the pioneers have to face the bigger challenge. Now we had a huge problem when we tried to say, the government said at that time, okay, do more of renewable energy. Solar in Tamil Nadu solar energy is very abundant in Tamil Nadu because that is one area where, and as in Goa, even better than Goa because you see, so there are areas which are best suited. Now the problem is, so solar energy or all these energies have large number of issues. There are technical issues which we will not get into. So our immediate problem was that if you try to have too much of solar energy in a grid, the grid becomes very, very, unsustainable because you cannot have the grid balanced, which means power cuts will be there, fluctuations and all that, and then you will be cursed again. So there are large, again, technical issues associated. What we may say very simply, it requires a huge amount of work. There are technical issues, but that is not what we are going to discuss. We are saying that there are ways, if there are resources put for that, there are advantages. People will find solution, and they have found solutions and cost-effective solutions. That is what innovation is about.